Hi, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. First and foremost, good evening, because at the time I'm filming this, it's like 8 p.m. and Mama is tired. That's the good stuff. In today's video, I thought that it would be interesting, informative, entertaining for me to kind of talk about my experience as a beta reader and how to beta read, so to speak. I do have some notes. I came prepared because I knew ahead of time that I was going to be filming a lot at night this month because my husband is on a work trip. So during the day, I'm with my son because he's on spring break. So I'm sorry if I look down. I'm gonna try to like read it and then look you in the eyes, respectfully. But if I am looking down in some spots, I apologize in advance. So I've broken this discussion up into sections. So let's get into section 1. What is beta reading? This is a step in the publishing process where an author will have like an unfinished manuscript. It'll be like nearly final in its completion, but it is still technically an unfinished copy of their book, manuscript, whatever, and they will hand it out to beta readers. And this is basically to get more sets of eyes on the book and get feedback. Now, there can also be alpha readers, which get an even more unfinished copy of the book, and it's more or less like plot beats, I think, from the research that I've done, because I have never alpha read before, I've only beta read before. So I think that what they're getting is a more unfinished, less refined version. And I think that alpha readers are more supposed to be helping with major plot beats and overall structure and flow. And then once that's kind of taken into consideration and implemented to the manuscript, it gets handed at the next step to beta readers who look at it more critically as readers. I think the major things that beta readers are looking for and what authors are expecting from beta readers is, does the plot make sense? Notes on the pacing, notes on character development, and how enjoyable the book is overall. I think that, if you have a group of beta readers, and let's say for easy numbers, you have 10 of them, right? And 9 out of 10 of them don't enjoy it, then, you know that as an author, you'll have to go back through and really comb over it and kind of tweak some things, maybe tone shift in places or add better dialogue or like whatever it is that their major complaint was. Like, you really have to work on the area when it's like the majority of them. But same thing for something positive as well. If 9 out of 10 readers absolutely are in love with one scene, like say it's perfect and it was like their favorite part, and then one person says, oh, I hated this part, like you kind of have to weigh the scales and like, take into consideration the checks and balances, risk and reward of cutting stuff out. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. A beta reader's main job is to give early feedback so the author can adjust any plot holes, pacing issues, character development issues, if there's an unlikable character who's not supposed to be unlikable, like world building inconsistencies maybe. And this is to really boost that author's chances of success after final publication. I want to note that it is so important for beta readers to be honest. This part of the publishing process is meant to be helpful, and sometimes to be helpful, you need to be a little bit ruthless in your, when I read a book that I'm not beta reading, if there's like a plot hole that's like super minor, I might just, blow over it and forget about it. But if I'm reading a beta read where there's a super minor plot hole that normally I would just be like, okay, whatever, I would point it out and be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Now's the time to fix it. If you want to, or if you have the ability to, now would be the perfect time. So like, it is super important to just be honest about anything that you notice that you think could help make the book better. All of the different opinions and comments from beta readers put together in summation is really going to help that author fully flesh out and actualize this story that they've envisioned in their head in a way that makes sense to other people. Because it doesn't matter how long an author has thought of this world in their head and how detailed it is in their head. If some of those details aren't coming across on the page, that's going to hinder the success of the book, the enjoyment of the book, whatever you want to call it. But this is really the moment for people to put their pride aside. And I know sometimes it's hard to say things that you think might be mean or that you think might hurt the author's feelings, but this is not about hurting their feelings. It's about respecting them enough to be honest and be helpful. I think because of this like honesty, component, it is usually standard practice for authors to not have really close family or friends be a beta reader, like in this stage where you really need to like kind of whittle down and get down to the nitty gritty of if things make sense, or if they're even enjoyable. Because, if someone's like super close to you, if it's your mom or your uncle or your best friend, like they're always going to have like a little bit of a qualm about hurting your feelings, even if you're not intending to. So I think that it can be iffy in those areas where like, you want family and friends' opinion, but you also need people to be honest. So again, it is just super important to be honest. If you are given the opportunity to beta read, or if it's something you're interested in, just make sure you're being honest with the author. So that way you're not wasting their time or your time either. Part 2. How do you become a beta reader? So the way that I became a beta reader is basically just my friend Jade. I knew that they were writing a book, and I had known for years that they were writing a book. And basically she just messaged me one day and was like, hey, I would really be honored and love if you could beta read for me. And Jade had even said, like, normally I wouldn't want like really close friends at this stage, but I just know that you're going to be brutally honest with me and I really need it. And so I was, of course, super honored. And I said yes, because I am nothing if not literally so loyal as a friend that I will do anything my friends ask me to do. So I had never beta read before that time, and I was really nervous, but I accepted it and I said yes. I think most of the time, the way that authors find beta reads is through social media. Social media is also marketing in this day and age. So like an author's personal Instagram, for example, I'm sure they post, like a call to action, like, hey, beta readers needed for XYZ book. Or maybe they post on their website, or maybe they have a newsletter that goes out and there's some kind of sign up form. Obviously, my friend Jade like reached out to me like personally and asked me to do it, but I do also know that she had a Google Doc. It was like a Google form sign up, and it was kind of a questionnaire where it asked you like your name, what genre you normally read, what tropes you like to read in books, and if there's any tropes that you specifically avoid or don't like for whatever reason. And obviously that is because you want people to read your book who would normally read your book. So if you're writing a YA fantasy, you're not going to pick a reader who only 100% reads nonfiction. Like that person is going to hate your book, and it's not going to be helpful. It's not going to be useful to you to have this nonfiction reader just being like, I don't understand magic. I don't like this. I don't like that. I hate this trope. I hate that trope. I hate this trope. So really, as an author and as a reader, if you are going to beta read, and if you're trying to become a beta reader and you see sign up forms, it's important to make sure that you're reading books within your niche, basically. Like, I am a fantasy reader above all else. There are other genres that I read. Would I beta read in another genre? Maybe, but it depends on probably the book and the genre. Like maybe I would beta read a horror book because I have really been into horror in the last like year and a half, and I feel like I've read enough of them and I know what I like in them that I could feel confident also beta reading for a horror book. Now, there's a lot of debate about beta readers taking money, because I think that if you like offer your services and like let's say you reach out to an author and you're like, hey, I'll beta read your book, but you got to pay me $50 or something. I don't know prices. There are always the stipulations of like, oh, well, this person's getting paid. So like, are they being honest? Because obviously it's a job that they're performing, and like you want to please your employer and possibly have the opening for more like beta reading opportunities with that person. So like, are you going to be honest? Because you're not going to want to piss them off. You're going to want to make sure that, you're still like in their good graces. I beta read for free, but I do also know that some people beta read professionally on Fiverr, I can never remember how that's pronounced. And if you like go on Fiverr, I don't know what it is, Fiverr. If you go on Fiverr and search beta reader or beta reading, there are like hundreds of people on there who are doing it as a paid service. And honestly, like if you're an author and you don't know how to go about getting a beta reader, finding one who is like publicly offering their services is such a viable way to go about it. And I'm not saying doing it for money is bad and doing it for free is better. I think it's just, like it maybe is a little gray area just because it's like, oh, well, you paid for it. Is it really super honest? I'm sure that there are people out there who are getting money for it, who are like so honest and so helpful in their critiques. But I'm also sure that there's a couple of people out there doing it for money who kind of sugarcoat things because they just want people to keep coming back to them. Like, this beta reader loves my books, I'm going to keep going back to them, you know? So just be wary of that if you're in the market to become a beta reader, or if you're looking for a beta reader. Just make sure that you're having people with integrity. I would just, protect yourself in that way as an author. Like, you don't want someone who's going to lie to you because you're paying them. And as a beta reader, if you are getting paid for it, just make sure you're still being honest. I will say, I was talking about this entire video with my friend Jade, who I'll link down below. Jade at Jade Juniper. She makes bookish videos and writing videos as well. And she has a video, which I will link in the card here, about her beta reading process and how, as an author, like how that worked for her on her end, how she went about getting beta readers, and what she does with the information she gets from them, like once we've read the book. But when I was talking to her about this video, she did point out that authors opting to get a paid beta reader might be like their only option. Like, maybe they don't know anyone, or maybe they just don't have a huge following on social media. So the posts that they're posting are not generating a lot of views or traction. And maybe they've just had bad luck in the past with a couple of beta readers who do offer to beta read for them, or maybe they keep getting people who are flaky. Because if you pay for a service, like if an author were to pay for a beta reader, you're kind of guaranteeing that this person is going to finish your manuscript because you're paying for that service. Whereas if you have a bunch of beta readers who are reading for free, and somebody in the middle of your book is like, hey, my life fucking happened, I can't continue. Like, there's no contractual obligation for that person to like suck it up and stick through it and read your book. So it is still like a super viable option, obviously, to go pay for a beta reader. And likewise, as a reader, it is also viable if you love beta reading and you want to do it all the time. But, fucking capitalist society we live in, you got to make some money. I get it. Like, I understand, and like, no judgment either way. But yeah. Part 3. How do authors host or present beta reads? When I beta read for Jade, they used Google Docs, and essentially I got an email with a link to this document, and it was the first half of the book. And on Google Docs, you can highlight parts of the document and leave little comment bubbles that appear on the side. And so that's like the easiest way, I think, to communicate between the author and the reader, or for the author to look at comments without it having to be like a direct communication line. Because, if I were to text Jade and be like, hey, I just read a part and I didn't like it, that's awkward. It's definitely, the author would need to be, I think, in the correct headspace to receive criticism. So it's definitely a good idea to have that space carved out for you, like in a Google Doc. Another thing that I really liked about the process, the way that she set it up, was that she had these checkpoints like predetermined throughout the story. So certain chapters would have a comment basically attached to the chapter title with a link to a Google form. And it was kind of just a questionnaire about your enjoyment of that specific section of chapters. If there were any comments that you really needed to like elaborate on, or any characters that you felt like in this section just completely fell off, or your favorite character from that section. And it was just a nice way to like sit and ruminate with what you've already read, instead of like, trudging your way through the whole book and then trying to remember something from the beginning. But it was a nice way to kind of like stop and take a breath and just think back on what you had just read. And like I said, just reiterate anything that needed to be elaborated on, or, over explain something because you can't find the right words for it, which I'm sure I've done a few times. Now, there are definitely other ways to host or, like have your beta reads set up. I'm sure that an author could set up like a Discord where you had access to a Google Doc, but maybe you had like sections on Discord where you needed to leave certain comments about certain aspects. Like maybe there was a section for like characters, world building, foreshadowing, I don't know, plot holes, stuff like that. And so that way, when the author was working on like specific areas, they could go check that area. I also asked my friends Faye and Mair, who I will also link down below. Faye said that she has done a Google Doc one before, and that was the easiest one in terms of the way it was set up. But I think she said that she also had just had like the document sent to her as well, where she just kind of read it and then gave feedback after. Mair did say that she had done one beta read where it was basically just a Word document and you were supposed to open a second Word document, and as you were reading, you needed to type comments into the second Word document, and then you would send off that second Word document back to the author. Now, to me, that sounds like a lot of work and also confusing because I feel like I would lose my place quite a bit. And I think that Mair also said that she had one author who had set up an Excel spreadsheet. I think you got access to the document, whether that was like a Google Doc or a Word doc, and you were supposed to go into the Excel spreadsheet. And I think all of the beta readers had access to the spreadsheet, and you were just supposed to add your comments like into the Excel spreadsheet. Now, to me, that sounds like chaotic. As an author, like I could not open a document and see comments from like 10 to 20 people at the same time. I think I would just shit a brick and close the document and just give up. That sounds super hectic. So anyone who does it that way, that's a superpower I do not possess. Part 4, how do I approach beta reading? Overall, what I'm looking for in a beta read is the same exact areas I'm looking for when I'm rating a book that I've read for enjoyment. And those areas are characters, atmosphere, writing style, or the prose, intrigue, or logic, my overall enjoyment. I also try to notice moments of great world building or like story beats, like emotional moments, and if they hit the reader, like if they made me feel the way I was supposed to feel in that moment when it was happening. So when I open a book, obviously the first thing you see is the first chapter, right? First chapters are super important in my opinion because I have read a first chapter of a book at a bookstore and been like, no, I'm never reading that. This sounded awful. The setup was boring. I don't understand what's going on. This makes no sense. So I feel like for the first chapter, that is something I focus a lot on. Obviously, it's the first thing I do. It's the first chapter. But I feel like I read over the first chapter a few times and genuinely ask myself, like, is this an interesting opening to this book? The first time I'll read the chapter, I'll just read it through. I won't stop to make comments. I won't try to like think of how it could be better. I just read it from beginning to end and see like, okay, I just absorbed this first chapter. I go sit with it for a minute and then I'll go back and reread it and kind of see if there's anything that I think needs to be changed. I think for the first chapter, you want to try to avoid things that are too confusing. Or things that are too boring. Like it's the first chapter. You really want to hook people in so they want to continue your story. If I did find anything that I thought was confusing or boring, I might highlight that spot and say like, hey, this seems like it could be really interesting, but unfortunately I got bored here. Or I could highlight something and just say like, hey, this is super cool, but also I'm really confused and I have no idea what's going on. Now, if the author is intending for you to think something is super cool, but you're confused until later on when something happens, then, you know, no harm, no foul. But it is important to point that out because if you're not supposed to be confused in the first chapter, it's definitely really important to iron those wrinkles out before you move on to the story. I think one of the main things that I'm looking at when I'm beta reading is the book's overall natural pace. Do the plot points feel like they're happening in a way that feels like natural, like organic, so to speak? Like, does it feel like forced action? Do I feel like we're getting to things too quickly? Do I feel like things are taking way too fucking long to start going? Like, I want to make sure that I'm letting the author know if I feel like this flow feels organic. It feels like really good pacing. Like there's never a moment where I'm like so bored, contrasted with a moment of like so much action that I just can't keep up, because you really want to balance those scales. I mean, you do want to have highs and lows for sure, but you don't want it to be such a drastic extreme that people are either DNFing when it's way too boring or when it's way too confusing. You want to make sure that the pace is ebbing and flowing in a way that feels natural. Another thing that I personally am really like focused on when I'm beta reading is continuity. Like, did we start a scene with 3 characters in a conversation and then all of a sudden the third character walks in the door and joins the conversation when they had already been a part of it? Or, you know, did a character take off her shoes to walk through the sand and then 2 minutes later, did she take her shoes off again to go in the water? Like, you just want to make sure that random little like details like that are like making sense, that the continuity is there. Because if you just have these missteps all of the time, people are going to pick up on it and notice, like, okay, nothing ever makes sense in this book. People are just appearing out of nowhere. We'll be in a fight scene, and then all of a sudden there's like 800 extra people. Nobody told us about them. The character took her shoes off twice, whatever. Like, you just want to make sure that there is a continuity, a continuity in the small moments and the big moments. Another thing that I personally look for when I'm beta reading a book, especially like a fantasy, is the physics of things. So like a fight scene, the way you're describing it physically, does that make sense? Like, I'm sure Jade would love to tell you that I am a stickler for these fight scenes where, you're describing someone's back turned and then they flip somebody over, but then that person flips onto their stomach. But if you describe them flipping them over their shoulder and they were both facing the same way, that person should land on their back. Like, I'm just closing my eyes and literally picturing what you're telling me. And physically, like, if that doesn't make sense, like, I'm going to point it out. And maybe a lot of people don't think that's like a big deal, but, I don't know. I feel like if your fight scenes aren't making sense, or, like if a character is climbing an area that supposedly is like really dangerous and slippery, and then like all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, like climbing this is like super easy. Like, I'm going to point that out because I'm like, hey, like you said this was going to be hard to climb, and then it's not hard to climb. So maybe you need to show a little bit of struggle, and then like the character feels more confident, or, who knows? Maybe there's a fight scene and all of a sudden like 10 extra people show up, but it was a duel between 2 people and now there's 10 people involved. Like, you really got to iron that out. You got to make sure, like, physically, like, where are these people coming from? Or, if their swords are clashing overhead and then you twirl and stab somebody in the ass cheek, like, how did you get there? Like, if your sword's over your head and then you turn around, they're still where they were. So if you turn around and stab them in the ass, whose ass are you stabbing? Like, you just want to make sure, like, just close your eyes and envision some of this stuff and make sure that it actually makes sense physically. One of the last major things I will look for as a beta reader is character development. Does this character feel like they're progressing as a human? Because you have to remember, these characters are living within the scope of this world. So let's say we have a character at the beginning of a story. They're, a fresh-faced youngin', and they've never been in a fight and they've never seen magic, and they're so bubbly and so positive. And then, they go through a harrowing experience, and then at the end of the book, they're the same exact person that they started out as. Does that make sense? No. If this person has seen hundreds of people die, if this person has seen dark magic, if this person has had near-death experiences, by the end of the book, that character's personality is going to shift a little. That character's development is going to head in a different direction than it would if they were still at the beginning, happily living their naive, ignorant life. Like, their eyes are opening up to all these things around them. At the end of the book, do they feel like they've progressed appropriately for what they've been through? Do I feel like this character makes sense within the world? If you have a world that's like medieval in the setting, and then you have a character being like, what's up, yo? Like, that doesn't make sense. The character needs to be like fit within the world around them, and their personality and their interpersonal journey as well really needs to like have a forward arc, like an upward arc, I think, because if a character is just flatlined through the whole book, like, what is the point? Like, we're following this character for a reason. We want to get to know them. We want to see them grow and change and persevere and be successful. But like, it's so hard to root for a character if they're just the same fucking person every fucking chapter. Like, so I think that's another thing that I really look for when I'm beta reading is like, does this character make sense? Is their journey making sense? Does their journey and do their personality like fit within this world? I also think it's really important that if you find a character boring, like, you should point that out. If a character just has absolutely zero draw for you, like, you got to let the author know, because either they're wasting time trying to flesh out this character that nobody cares about, or something got lost in translation and maybe the author just needs to kind of fluff up some scenes with this character, or maybe the dialogue from this character just needs to be reevaluated. Like, make sure that the dialogue from the character is matching like the character's intentions or what your intentions are for the character. So I just am looking for all of those things at the same time, and it is exhausting. Beta reading does definitely make me really tired, because it's not like I'm sitting down on the couch with a book reading just for my personal enjoyment. I'm really trying to make sure that I'm paying attention, because I want to help this author be successful in like finishing up and like buttoning up all these loose ties with their book. I will also say, when I am beta reading, yes, I am focusing a lot harder than when I'm reading for enjoyment, but I'm also still a reader. Like I'm still just a reader, you know? So I think like for me personally, I try really hard to make comments that are going to be useful, comments that are critical in the assessment of situations, like I said, characters, plot, physics, etc. But I also am going to leave comments when I read a sentence that's just absolutely fucking beautiful. I'm going to highlight it and be like, wow, that was a beautiful piece of writing. Or if there's a moment that really just makes me like giddy, I'm going to highlight it and be like, OMG, this moment was perfect. And then you want to kind of explain the reason behind that feeling. Because if you're just leaving comments that are like, ew, like that's not helpful. Or if you're leaving a comment that's just, oh, LOL, like those aren't very helpful. But you know, if you leave a comment that's like, ew, I can't believe this character did that thing because what we had learned before was this, but now after seeing them do that thing, I realized this about them, and I don't know if you intended that, but this part grossed me out. You know, like you can make that emotion useful, but you just have to put in a little effort. There will be times where I'll highlight something and be like, LMAO, holy shit, this part was so funny. You did a great job making this character's like comedic timing pop off the page right here. Like you just want to give like a constructive reason for that like comment. Like it's definitely fine to be like, oh my God, I love them. Why? Why do you love them? Or LMAO, this part was so fucking funny. Like it's okay to say those things, but I think just adding like 1 or 2 sentences of like what that emotion was for can be helpful for the author. Because let's say I highlight a part and I'm like, LMAO, this was so fucking funny. You really made this character have such a good sense of humor. And then the author is like, that character wasn't supposed to be funny. You know, so they can go back and kind of be like, okay, great, I need to change that. Another positive thing that I try to insert into my, you know, intersperse with my criticism is when a character is so well written that I hate their fucking guts. When I tell you, no spoilers, when I tell you Jade is so good at writing a villain, like literally, there have been times where I'm shaking in rage and I will highlight a part and be like, hey, you are so good at writing this character type. You are so good at XYZ. This scene really brought to life the absolute vile, disgusting shithead. Like, you know, I get a little heated. I get a little heated sometimes, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that it's important to point out what the author does well, because then when they do go back over these comments, they can be like, okay, great. 8 out of 10 beta readers said I'm really good at writing villains. I don't need to look at those villain monologues. I don't need to look at these villain scenes. I can focus myself on the other areas that do need work. Or like, let's say if an author is someone who maybe struggles with world building or like imagery, for example, and they have one scene where you're just like, holy fuck, like your imagery here was on point. Like I could picture everything you were saying. This was so beautifully laid out. Like I can really envision the world that you're getting at here. Then they know like, okay, I need to write more the way that I did in this scene. Like those positive comments, even though it may not feel helpful to you, just to be like, hey, I really love this part because I could envision everything clearly. Like that might not feel helpful to you as a beta reader, but I promise you it is helpful to the author. And I know that because I asked Jade. I asked like 10 times. I was like, I just want to make sure like these kind of comments are cool, right? And she was like, yes, absolutely. Because then I know that I need to write more like that. Or even, you know, for example, with the villains, she was like, okay, great. I'm so glad that the way that I want them to come across is coming across because I fucking hate their guts. And Jade's like, okay, cool. I'm so glad that you do because that's what I wanted. You know, so those positive comments can also be helpful because like I said, it will help the author redirect their focus in the areas that they actually need to work on. The last thing I'm going to say that I do as a beta reader is ask questions. And if you're beta reading, you should also be asking questions. Communicate with the author. When is my due date? When would you like this by? Would you prefer if I got it done ahead of the due date? Is the due date like your final due date? Or, you know, if I can get it done earlier, is that also okay? I have a lot of time to beta read right now. Is it okay if I finish early? You know, or even asking them like, what kind of criticism do you want? What kind of comments are you looking for? Do you want me to point out things I don't like? Do you want me to point out things I do like? Or, you know, do you only want comments about world building and pacing? Like, there is definitely a preference. Like, every author is different and they're going to all have their own preferences. And I think communication is such a big part of beta reading. There were so many times where I would text Jade. Obviously, I have her number. She's my friend. But like, you know, if you're beta reading professionally or in a less casual way, you just reach out to them, however, WhatsApp, email, Discord, I don't know, whatever, Instagram. But there were so many times where I was like, hey, heads up, XYZ happened. Like, I might be a little bit behind. Hope that's okay. Or, you know, like, hey, I got pneumonia. I'm going to be 2 weeks behind. But I also would ask her like, hey, I left a comment and it was like this, like, I don't know, I think I highlighted something and I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I was like, are those kind of comments helpful for you? Because obviously I'm leaving a lot of feedback that could be perceived as picking apart things. And I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm, you know, also boosting you up in this process. Like, I don't want to tear you down. I want you to know that this book is good, but obviously it's going to need work. It's not finished yet. Like, is that helpful to you? And, you know, or I could stop that. Like, I don't have to do those kind of comments anymore. So it's definitely just important to just ask questions. Don't be afraid. Authors at the end of the day are just people. If you have the opportunity to read for an author that you like idolize, like, obviously I understand, like, you might be scared or like nervous or intimidated to ask them questions, but it is very important if you have the line of communication to ask them like, hey, I just want to, you know, get clarity on what it is that you're looking for, because otherwise you're just wasting your time and you're just wasting their time. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Overall, I also think it's really important to have fun beta reading. Yes, you could do it as a job, but if you're, you know, putting yourself out there and offering this service and you just fucking hate doing it, like, why would you do that? I think it's important that you're having fun with it. So reading within your niche is definitely going to help that, because I have fun reading fantasy books. I don't have fun reading like cookbooks or nonfiction. I mean, I do like some nonfiction, but for the most part, I don't like nonfiction. So I'm not going to offer to read more of it, you know? So I think having fun is the most important part, because then, you know, I think it'll help ease your nervousness. Like, if you're new at it, if you're just having fun, you know, and being honest and asking questions, like, I feel like you can't go wrong, because an author is always going to appreciate somebody who wants to be there, who wants to do it, versus somebody who feels like they're literally just going through the motions and not actually being constructive with their comments. Like, you know, having fun, but also taking it seriously. Have fun, but take it seriously. I'm so sorry. It's really late at night and I've been talking for 50 minutes. This is probably not 50 minutes long for you, but oh my God, it's 50 minutes long for me. Thank you so much. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you watching. I would love to know if you've ever beta read. Do you agree or disagree with any of the things I've mentioned? I would love to know more tips and tricks down below if you are a very experienced beta reader, because I am still super new to the whole process. I've only done it twice now. Or if you've never beta read, would you ever consider beta reading? Did my video convince you that you could do it? Honestly, beta reading is an experience I have loved so far. It makes me feel useful, which as a Leo is probably like my favorite thing, is to feel like I'm useful to people. It also just makes me feel like proud of myself. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I helped with that. Like, for example, when I talked about the slippers, that was a real thing from Jade's first book. A character had taken off some slippers to walk on the beach and then took the slippers off again 2 sentences later. And Jade was like, you were literally the only person who pointed that out. Thank you so much. You saved my life. And like, as a Leo, that just gave me a big head, you know? It made me feel like, ooh, go me, I did it. So, so that being said, thank you for watching. If you made it this far in the video, leave like a paper emoji down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.